Hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to take you through a comprehensive overview of clinical trials and research history. On this journey, we'll explore how medical research has evolved, from ancient healers to modern clinical trials. We'll also highlight the global perspective, including the significant contributions from India. So let's get started and discover the fascinating story behind clinical research and its impact on healthcare worldwide. Let's take a closer look at what clinical research really involves. At its core, it's about making data-driven decisions that ultimately aim to improve patient outcomes. This means that every step we take is backed by solid evidence, which is the foundation of evidence-based medicine. Now, because we're working with human health, government agencies play a crucial role in making sure that all trial standards are met. Their oversight ensures that the research is conducted ethically and safely. Speaking of ethics, ethical conduct is essential. This includes obtaining informed consent from participants and carefully managing any risks involved. Clinical research is a systematic process. It involves observing carefully, testing hypotheses, and gathering evidence to draw meaningful conclusions. This structured approach is what helps us determine whether medications, devices, or treatments are safe and effective for human use. In essence, clinical research is a vital branch of healthcare science. It guides us in understanding which interventions work and which don't, ultimately improving patient care. That's why it's so important, because it bridges science and real-world health outcomes. Let's take a closer look at the ancient milestones of clinical research. Starting with some of the earliest documented efforts, around 300 BC, Charaka Samhita recorded over 340 plant-based drugs and emphasized the importance of systematically observing treatment outcomes. Fast forward to around 600 BC, Sushruta Samhita not only cataloged over 700 medicinal plants, but also performed surgical experiments with careful documentation, setting foundational principles for medical testing. Now, these early texts highlight some core concepts that remain relevant today. For example, the effects of treatments should match what we expect in humans, and results must be repeatable and reproducible to ensure reliability. Testing should be conducted on both weak and strong patients to understand the full spectrum of effects. It's also important to test on simple diseases, not complicated or compound ones, to better understand specific drug actions. And finally, a drug should be free from external qualities. That is, its effects should be due to its inherent properties, not external factors. Moving forward in history, around 1025 AD, Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, documented rules for testing drugs on humans before applying them clinically, which was quite advanced for its time. His work, The Canon of Medicine, emphasized early clinical testing that closely resembles modern principles. Earlier, around 900 AD, Galen in Rome made significant contributions through comparative anatomy and drug testing on both animals and humans, advancing our understanding of drug effects. Even before that, around 400 BC, Hippocrates in Greece promoted systematic observation of diseases and aimed to distinguish medicine from superstition. And of course, in India, around 600 BC, Sushruta's surgical observations and plant-based remedies laid important groundwork for clinical testing practices. All these milestones reflect the rich, global history of clinical research, illustrating how the principles we build on today have deep roots in ancient times. Let's take a look at some key milestones in the history of clinical trials. Starting with Fibiger's trial in 1898, which was the first controlled trial using an alternate allocation method, specifically for serum therapy in diphtheria. This was a significant step towards structured experimentation. Moving back a few decades, Austin Flint in 1863 self-experimented with nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, during early anesthetic research, highlighting how individual experimentation contributed to medical advances. Then, in 1800, Humphrey Davy vaccinated an 8-year-old boy named James Phipps with cowpox to prevent smallpox. This was the first vaccine trial, laying the groundwork for immunology. Going further back, Edward Jenner in 1796 conducted what is considered the first controlled clinical trial, testing 6 remedies on 12 sailors suffering from scurvy. The discovery that citrus fruits could cure scurvy was a breakthrough in nutritional science. Before that, in 1747, James Lind, a Scottish surgeon, compared different wound treatments in a controlled way, which was an early form of comparative trial. And even earlier, in 1537, Ambroise Paré compared various wound treatments, marking some of the earliest efforts to systematically evaluate medical interventions. Now, looking at the broader picture, from the 16th to the 19th century, we see the dawn of modern trials. These pioneering efforts set the stage for the sophisticated, rigorous clinical research we rely on today. Each of these milestones helped shape how we conduct and interpret clinical trials, emphasizing the importance of control, comparison, and scientific methodology in advancing medicine. Let's take a moment to look at how the landscape of clinical trials evolved throughout the 20th century. Starting with the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906, this was really the first U.S. law aimed at regulating food and drug safety, laying the groundwork for the FDA we know today. Fast forward to 1937, the sulfanilamide disaster tragically resulted in 107 deaths, highlighting the urgent need for safety testing and leading to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. In 1947, the Nuremberg Code was established after World War II atrocities, setting out 10 fundamental principles for ethical human experimentation, including voluntary consent and scientific validity. Then, in 1948, the streptomycin TB trial marked the first randomized controlled trial, a milestone in scientific rigor. Moving into the 1960s and 70s, we saw significant ethical reflections with the Declaration of Helsinki in 1964, which introduced the concept of ethical standards for medical research involving humans. Just over a decade later, the Tuskegee syphilis scandal in 1972 exposed the devastating consequences of unethical research, emphasizing the importance of voluntary consent and protection of participants. This tragic history led to the Belmont Report in 1979, which codified core principles like respect for persons, beneficence, and justice, principles that still underpin our ethical framework today. And finally, in 1996, the ICH-GCP E6 guidelines were adopted globally, providing international harmonized standards for good clinical practice, ensuring consistency and integrity across clinical research worldwide. All these milestones highlight a clear progression, from recognizing the importance of safety and ethics to establishing comprehensive, standardized guidelines, marking the turning point in how we conduct clinical trials in the 20th century. Let's walk through the phases of clinical trials and understand how they work together to bring a new drug or device to market. First, before any human testing, we start with preclinical studies, which include lab and animal research. These studies focus on safety, toxicity, and dosing, helping us determine if the product is worth moving forward. Next is Phase 0, also called exploratory studies. Here, we look at bioavailability and perform microdosing to understand how the substance behaves in the body, all with a very small number of subjects, typically 10 to 15. Moving into Phase I, the main goal is safety. We test with a small group, around 10 to 15 subjects, to assess safety, side effects, and dosage. This phase helps establish the initial safety profile of the product. In Phase II, we expand a bit, usually involving 20 to 100 subjects, to evaluate both safety and efficacy. This is where we look at short-term effects and gather more data on how well the product works and if it causes any side effects. Phase III takes it further, involving 300 to 3,000 subjects across multiple centers. The focus here is confirming the efficacy and safety on a larger scale. These are randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, designed to produce robust evidence. Once these phases show promising results, we seek regulatory approval from agencies like the FDA, EMA, or CDSCO. This approval allows the drug or device to enter the market. After approval, the process doesn't end. Post-marketing surveillance, or phase IV, continues to monitor long-term safety and real-world effectiveness. This includes collecting data from a broader population over time to confirm the benefits and identify any rare side effects. Throughout all these stages, the goal is to ensure that the product is safe, effective, and beneficial for patients. This rigorous process helps maintain trust and integrity in the development of new medical innovations. Let's take a closer look at some of the key ethical frameworks that guide clinical research. First, if you want to stay connected, you can follow us on Instagram at @ClinicalResearch23. Now, an established institutional review board, or IRB, is fundamental because it serves as the basis for U.S. federal research regulations. The IRB ensures that research is conducted ethically and responsibly. Moving on, the principles of justice, beneficence, and respect for persons come from the Belmont Report of 1979. Justice refers to fairly distributing the burdens of research, so no group is unfairly burdened or excluded. Beneficence is about maximizing benefits and minimizing harm to participants. Respect for persons emphasizes the importance of autonomy and obtaining informed consent, recognizing that individuals should have control over their participation. The Belmont Report also highlights the need for post-trial access to beneficial treatments, meaning participants should be able to access effective therapies after the study ends. It states that placebo use should only occur when no proven treatment exists, to avoid denying participants effective care. An independent ethics committee review is required to oversee the research, especially when vulnerable populations are involved, as they need extra protection. Ultimately, it's the physician's duty to safeguard research subjects throughout the process. Next, the Declaration of Helsinki, established in 1964, emphasizes that subjects must be free to withdraw at any time. It also stresses avoiding physical or mental suffering, and that animal research should precede human trials to ensure safety. The experiment must produce meaningful, fruitful results, and voluntary, informed consent is essential to respect participant autonomy. Finally, the Nuremberg Code from 1947 was a pioneering ethical framework developed after World War II. It set the stage for modern research ethics by establishing principles like voluntary consent and the necessity to avoid unnecessary suffering. These frameworks collectively form the backbone of ethical conduct in clinical research, ensuring that we prioritize participant safety, autonomy, and fairness throughout the entire process. Let's take a look at the evolution of clinical trials in India. Starting with the pre-independence era before 1947, India was involved in global disease research during British colonial rule. Vaccines for diseases like plague, cholera, and malaria were tested here, laying an early foundation for clinical research. The Indian Council of Medical Research, or ICMR, was established in 1911, initially as the Indian Research Fund Association, to coordinate health research efforts. Moving into the post-independence period from 1947 to the 1980s, India's focus shifted to tackling endemic diseases such as tuberculosis, leprosy, malaria, and cholera. During this time, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940, which was amended multiple times, became the key regulation governing drug testing. However, at that stage, India only conducted phase III clinical trials, which meant no first-in-human studies were happening here yet. In the liberalization era of the 1990s, India began opening up to the global pharmaceutical industry. Economic reforms allowed multinational pharma companies to operate more freely, and the TRIPS Agreement of 1994 significantly changed India's intellectual property landscape, making it more attractive for innovation and research. This period also saw India recognized as a destination for contract research organizations, or CROs, which support clinical development. The new drug policy of 1986 further played a role in shaping this landscape. Then, in the modern era of the 2000s and 2010s, we see a major shift. Schedule Y was amended in 2005 to allow simultaneous Phase I to III trials, enabling India to conduct first-in-human studies for the first time. This was a turning point, opening doors for more innovative research. The Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, CDSCO, strengthened its oversight, ensuring better regulation and safety standards. All of these developments helped India rise to become one of the top 5 global destinations for clinical trials, reflecting its growing prominence in the field. So, over the decades, India's clinical research landscape has evolved from early vaccine testing during colonial times to a global hub for innovative and regulated clinical trials today. Let's take a look at how clinical trials in India have evolved over time. To start, you can find the subscribe handle for updates at @ClinicalResearch23. Historically, India had around 600 or more active clinical trials, with key therapeutic areas including oncology, cardiology, diabetes, and CNS disorders. Back in 2008, we saw what's called the trial boom, a significant surge in clinical research activity. A major milestone was reached when India was allowed to conduct Phase I, or first-in-human trials, simultaneously with global trials. This was a huge breakthrough because it aligned India more closely with international standards. Going back a bit further to 2005, the Schedule Y amendment was a pivotal change. It allowed multinational sponsors to conduct trials here, making India an increasingly attractive destination due to its large patient pool, lower costs, and genetic diversity, factors that are highly valuable for research. Prior to that, in 2000, India opened up to global trials with specific requirements. While new drugs needed to be tested locally, only Phase III trials were mandated, meaning that data from foreign Phase I and II trials could be accepted without local testing. Looking even further back, in 1988, India introduced Schedule Y, which was the first major drug regulation law. It required safety testing before any new drugs could be marketed in India, setting a foundation for regulatory oversight. Going all the way to 1940, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act was enacted, marking one of the earliest efforts to regulate drug safety. Around this time, the Indian Research Fund Association was established under British rule, marking the birth of India's official medical research body. And finally, in 1911, the Indian Council of Medical Research, or ICMR, was founded. This organization has been pivotal in shaping India's medical research landscape. So this timeline really illustrates how India's regulatory environment and research capabilities have steadily developed, paving the way for the robust clinical trial ecosystem we see today. Let's take a moment to look at some recent updates and challenges in India's clinical research landscape. If you're following us on social media, you can subscribe for more insights at @ClinicalResearch23. Moving on to the new drugs policy of 2023, it aims to further streamline the approval process, making it faster and more efficient. One of the key tools introduced is the SUGAM portal, which allows for online submission and tracking of trial applications, bringing greater transparency and convenience. There's also an accelerated approval pathway now available for global new drugs, which can significantly speed up bringing innovative treatments to patients. Additionally, ethics committees are now required to be registered with the CDSCO, ensuring oversight and compliance. Another important aspect is the mandatory audiovisual documentation of the informed consent process, enhancing patient protection. Moreover, the new rules mandate compensation for any trial-related injuries or deaths, emphasizing participant safety. All these reforms are part of the comprehensive overhaul brought about by the new Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules of 2019, which significantly updated Schedule Y. However, this progress hasn't been without its setbacks. Since 2014, we've seen a series of reforms, but also some stark declines. For example, India's trial numbers dropped sharply, from over 500 active trials down to fewer than 100. Back in 2013, the Ministry of Health imposed a moratorium on new trial approvals, largely due to concerns over safety and regulatory oversight. This was further fueled by media backlash, which led to a near suspension of new trial approvals altogether. One critical issue was the lack of proper compensation for trial participants in cases of harm, which raised serious ethical concerns. There were also controversies around CDSCO granting approvals to 33 drugs without adequate review, leading to questions about regulatory rigor. A parliamentary committee even reported 39 deaths linked to alleged trial negligence in 2012, highlighting the urgent need for stronger safeguards. All these challenges, regulatory hurdles, safety concerns, and public trust issues, have shaped the ongoing reforms aimed at restoring confidence and ensuring ethical standards in India's clinical research environment. Let's explore why India is a key global destination for clinical trials. First, our subscription handle is at ClinicalResearch23, which you can follow for more updates. India's regulatory environment is well aligned with international standards like ICH-GCP, US FDA, and EMA, ensuring that data collected here is globally acceptable. This alignment makes India an attractive location for multinational studies. Our national institutions, such as ICMR and AIIMS, have strong research capabilities and collaborate globally, which enhances the quality and credibility of our research efforts. India faces a high prevalence of diseases like diabetes, tuberculosis, cardiovascular conditions, and cancer, creating an ideal environment for patient recruitment and diverse trial populations. We also benefit from a large pool of English-speaking healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, and research coordinators, which simplifies communication and trial management. In Tier 1 cities, we have world-class hospitals with trained investigators and advanced ICUs, providing excellent medical infrastructure for conducting complex trials. Another important aspect is our genetic diversity, with multiple ethnic groups that are valuable for pharmacogenomic studies and understanding how different populations respond to treatments. Our primary research language is English, which offers an advantage in global collaboration. Additionally, over 100 NABH-accredited hospitals are involved in trials across the country, ensuring quality standards. Conducting trials here is also cost-effective, about 30% lower than Western countries, making India an economically advantageous choice. Finally, India's population exceeds 1.4 billion people, making it the largest patient pool globally. This vast demographic provides a unique opportunity for large-scale studies and faster recruitment, positioning India as a strategic hub for global clinical research. Let's take a moment to look at the global clinical research timeline and some of its key milestones. Starting way back in 1796, we have Jenner's development of the smallpox vaccine, which was a groundbreaking moment in immunology. Moving forward to 1747, James Lind conducted the first documented trial on scurvy, highlighting the importance of systematic research in medicine. Fast forward to 1906, the FDA precursor was established, laying the foundation for modern drug regulation. In 1947, the Nuremberg Code was created, setting essential ethical standards for human experimentation. Then, in 1964, the Helsinki Declaration further refined these ethical principles, emphasizing the well-being of research participants. Jumping ahead to more recent times, in 1979, the Belmont Report was published, providing core ethical guidelines for research involving human subjects. The ICH-GCP E6 guidelines in 1996 then standardized good clinical practice across borders, ensuring consistency in trial quality. In 2005, India allowed Phase I clinical trials, marking a significant step in expanding research capacity. And most recently, in 2019, the NDCT rules were implemented in India to strengthen the regulatory framework. All these milestones show how global standards and innovations have shaped the way we conduct clinical research today, connecting historical lessons with current practices to ensure ethical and effective development of new treatments. Let's take a closer look at the various types of clinical trials and their study designs. First, there's the subscribe category, which includes examples like cancer pain management. Here, the focus is on improving comfort and overall well-being, often by collecting patient-reported outcomes, or PROs. These are insights directly from patients about their symptoms and quality of life, which are essential in palliative care research. For instance, we might conduct trials to evaluate quality of life, comparing, say, CT scans versus MRI in imaging accuracy, or testing new diagnostic tools by identifying biomarkers. Moving on, we have diagnostic trials. These often include studies funded by organizations like the USPSTF, and they focus on evaluating the accuracy of laboratory tests, imaging techniques, or new biomarkers. The goal is to validate and improve diagnostic methods, as well as test new tools for early detection or diagnosis. Next are prevention trials, which are crucial for patients who may not have other options available. These trials typically require regulatory approval, such as from the FDA or CDSCO, and they often involve unapproved treatments for serious conditions. For example, they might test vaccines, vitamins, or minerals to prevent diseases, or explore lifestyle changes and chemoprevention strategies in cancer. Then, we have expanded access, which is often used for patients with no other options. This involves outside standard treatments that haven't yet received full approval. A classic example is the Framingham Heart Study, which used observational methods like cross-sectional surveys, case control studies, and cohort follow-ups, all without giving any intervention. These studies help us understand disease patterns and risk factors. Speaking of observational studies, these are essential for understanding disease dynamics without intervening directly. For example, COVID-19 vaccine trials often used blinded or double-blinded designs where participants received either the vaccine or a placebo. These are considered the gold standard of clinical evidence because they help establish causality and safety profiles. Finally, we come to interventional trials, or randomized controlled trials, which are the most rigorous type of clinical study. Here, participants are randomly assigned to treatment or placebo groups, allowing us to assess the efficacy of new therapies under controlled conditions. This makes RCTs the cornerstone of evidence-based medicine, helping us determine what truly works in patient care. So, in summary, understanding these different trial types and designs helps us tailor research to specific questions, whether it's improving diagnostics, preventing disease, or testing new treatments. All of these are interconnected pieces that advance our overall goal, bringing better, safer care to patients. Let's take a look at some of the exciting future trends in clinical research. First, electronic health records and registry data are increasingly being used alongside traditional randomized controlled trial data, giving us a more comprehensive view of patient information. This approach helps us generate real-world evidence, or RWE, which is crucial for understanding how treatments perform in everyday settings. Next, there's a growing focus on precision medicine, where we tailor treatments based on genetic or molecular markers. This allows us to select the right patients for the right therapies, improving outcomes. Biomarker-driven trials are a key part of this, enabling us to test multiple treatments simultaneously, like the recovery trial for COVID-19, which sped up the process of finding effective therapies. Platform trials are also transforming how we conduct research. Instead of running separate studies, we can test multiple treatments within a single platform, making the process more efficient. Coupled with remote monitoring tools, telemedicine, and wearables, these trials reduce the need for patients to visit study sites physically. This is the essence of decentralized trials, or DCTs, which are making participation more accessible. Furthermore, we can modify trial parameters in real time based on interim data, making studies more efficient and ethical. This is known as adaptive trial design. Overall, these modern innovations are shaping a future where clinical research is more patient-centric, flexible, and faster than ever before. Let's start by noting that you can follow us on Instagram at @ClinicalResearch23. Clinical research plays a crucial role in saving lives. Every drug that gets approved has gone through thousands of hours of rigorous and ethical testing to ensure safety and efficacy. Looking ahead, the future of clinical research is incredibly exciting. Technologies like artificial intelligence, decentralized clinical trials, adaptive designs, and blockchain are set to revolutionize how we conduct research, making it faster and more efficient. India's unique strengths, its genetic diversity, high disease burden, and skilled workforce, make it a vital player on the global stage in clinical research. Our journey in India has evolved significantly over the years, starting with the Indian Council of Medical Research in 1911, then the introduction of Schedule Y in 1988, followed by the initiation of Phase I trials in 2005, and most recently, the New Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules in 2019. Ethical standards have also advanced tremendously, with milestones like the Nuremberg Code, Helsinki Declaration, and Belmont Report, all of which protect trial participants today. When we look at the roots of clinical research, the first true randomized controlled trial was conducted by James Lind in 1747, studying scurvy, laying the foundation for modern evidence-based medicine. Going even further back, clinical research traces its origins over 2,500 years to the teachings of Hippocrates and traditional Ayurvedic practices. In summary, clinical research is a continuous journey of progress, driven by innovation, ethical commitment, and a deep understanding of human health. And that brings us to the final slide. If you found this presentation helpful, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram at clinicalresearch23. Staying connected is a great way to keep up with the latest insights and updates in clinical research. Thank you so much for watching and engaging with this content. Your support means a lot and helps me continue sharing valuable knowledge. Remember, the goal is to keep learning and growing together in this field. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to connecting with you online. Have a great day.